All right, today we are digging into a really provocative thesis, one that argues there's been a fundamental shift in Western security. The whole idea here is that the concept of an alliance as we know it is being replaced by something, well, something entirely different. Let's get right into it. The source material just kicks the door down with this statement right here. It's an incredibly bold claim, right? It immediately tells you to forget everything you think you know about the US-Israel relationship. The argument is that words like friend or ally, they're just not enough anymore. They're obsolete. So what on earth does the author mean by a dual-platform security organism? Well, it's defined as a co-evolved defensive system. Think about that. It's not a partnership of choice, like a treaty you can sign or break. It's presented as a single living thing, an organism, with two core parts, each performing its own function, but completely integrated into the whole. To really wrap your head around this, the author says we have to move past that simple, everyday word we use all the time, ally. They argue it's actually misleading. And this slide really draws a sharp line in the sand. On the left, you've got your traditional ally. It's a temporary alignment, right? You manage interests, but there's always an exit strategy. But the organism, on the right, that's a whole different animal. It's described as being structurally interdependent, irreversibly coupled. And I love this phrase, it doesn't just manage threats, it metabolizes them. It's a functional, mechanical bond, not one based on feelings or sentiment. So if this thing is an organism, what's it built on? What's its DNA? Well, according to the article, it stands on several deep and what the author calls irreversible pillars of integration. This graphic from the source does a great job of laying out the entire argument. You can see these pillars feeding into what's called a single survival architecture. So let's break down each one. The very first pillar is all about demographics, and it really kicks off with this single number, 85%. That's right. 85% of the world's Jewish population lives in one of two countries, the US or Israel. The author argues that this incredible concentration makes the bond a structural demographic fact of life, not some foreign policy choice. It's framed as domestic continuity, a single, unbroken web of families, businesses, and culture that just happens to span two nations. Okay, the second pillar is a shared history, but it's framed in a really specific way, as two underdog stories that eventually converge. The argument here is that both America and Israel were fundamentally built by populations that Europe saw as disposable. The source draws a direct line between the Irish and Jewish diasporas, claiming that both groups developed a kind of survival intelligence from being under constant pressure, which ultimately merged together into a single national fabric right here in America. So now let's get into the mechanism. What was the catalyst? What does the author claim actually fused this relationship into a formal, hardwired security structure? This is the absolute linchpin of the argument, right here. The author says the whole game changed when antisemitism was reclassified, when it stopped being treated as just a social issue, a form of prejudice, and started being treated as a national security threat factor. Think about that shift. That moves the problem from the realm of civil rights into the world of counterterrorism and national defense. And the source points to this incredibly rapid 60-day sequence as proof positive of this shift. The timeline laid out begins on January 29, 2025, with the signing of an Executive Order 14188 that officially connects antisemitism to immigration enforcement. Just a few days later, the DOJ spins up a multi-agency task force. And before the end of the next month, that very same task force is already on the ground visiting university campuses. The author presents this as the machinery of enforcement coming to life, not just policy talk. And to hammer home the point that this has real-world consequences, the author highlights this quote from the White House fact sheet that came with the order. I mean, that is not subtle. It puts people on notice, directly framing protest activity as a potential cause for deportation. It's presented as an enforcement tool with some very sharp teeth. Okay, so this brings us to the technological heart of this security organism. It's a concept of deep tech convergence that the author gives a very cool name, Pax Silica. So what is Pax Silica? You've heard of Pax Romana, peace through Roman legions. Well, the source presents this as an era where stability, or Pax, is anchored in silicon, in hard technology. It's a really powerful idea of a new kind of peace, one that's maintained not by treaties, but by sheer technological dominance. And here's the formal definition from the source. Pax Silica is a deep tech co-production pipeline. Its whole purpose? To secure critical technology frontiers. We're talking AI, semiconductors, space, through a fully integrated US-Israel effort. The implication is crystal clear.
In this new model, national security is technological superiority.
And these are the critical sectors right at the core of Pax Silica. The framework described here isn't just about sharing a few notes. It formalizes joint R&D across the entire board, from AI and advanced computing all the way to robotics and new energy sources. It's really a blueprint for total technological fusion.
According to the author, this is the official language that turns the theory into state policy. The framework doesn't just talk about cooperation. No, it explicitly integrates Israel's entire tech ecosystem as a secure Pax Silica node. That's the language of network architecture, not diplomacy. The author argues this is the organism concept being written into law.
And finally, we get to the article's biggest and most startling claim, that this new organism isn't just another partnership. It's actively replacing the old transatlantic order that has defined the West for the better part of a century.
This slide just puts the two models side by side in stark contrast. On the left, you have the old transatlantic consensus, described as high maintenance, based on endless negotiation, and frankly, fracturing under pressure. Then on the right, you have the new U.S.-Israel organism, presented as self-reinforcing, built on interdependence, and optimized for speed and deployment. But here's the key difference, according to the author. It's hardened, not broken by pressure.
This quote right here really captures the author's entire thesis in a nutshell. The U.S.-Israel bond isn't just another piece of the puzzle. It's evolving into a superseding pillar of Western security, one that is poised to overtake and completely replace the old model. And this is the crucial question the source leaves us with. If this analysis is even close to correct, if this organism really is the future of Western defense, then what does that actually mean for the rest of the world? It completely reframes what we thought was a bilateral relationship into a global shift in the very architecture of power itself.